think about those times when you're uh, really trying to get someone to see your point of view, or maybe just explain where you're coming from.
Yeah, we all do it all the time.
Exactly. Whether it's just, a casual chat or something bigger, it kind of makes you wonder, is there more going on than just like hoping for the best?
Absolutely. And that's really what we're diving into today. We're going back to some foundational ideas about rhetoric.
Right, from Aristotle.
Yeah,
His On Rhetoric, Part 1.
exactly. And look, this isn't about getting lost in ancient philosophy, not really. It's more about finding, well, a powerful way to understand how communication and persuasion actually function.
And we're not just tackling Aristotle on his own, are we? We've got some help.
Right. We're also looking at commentary from Dr. Bobby in Rhetorical Tradition. It brings a sort of modern perspective to these, really old ideas from Aristotle.
Which is great. So the mission for this deep dive really is to pull out the key stuff from Aristotle, the practical insights that, you listening right now can actually use.
Yeah, without leading a PhD in classics, it's about understanding persuasion better.
Okay, so let's jump in. Where does Aristotle even start? What is rhetoric, according to him?
Well, he kicks things off by calling rhetoric the counterpart of dialectic.
Dialectic. Okay, remind me.
Think of dialectic as like a really structured conversation, almost a philosophical back and forth, trying to get to the truth through questions and answers.
Okay.
Rhetoric, though, it takes those kinds of common ideas, things anyone might talk about, and aims to persuade a specific audience about them. It's not tied to one subject.
Got it. So dialectic is maybe more about the what, and rhetoric is about the how of convincing someone.
In a way, yeah. And Dr. Bobby makes a good point here that even today, there isn't like one single perfect definition of rhetoric everyone uses,
Hmm.
but there are definitely core elements that, most people would agree are part of it.
So taking broad ideas and shaping them for persuasion, Aristotle also noticed something pretty basic about us, right? About how we all use this stuff.
He did. He basically said, look, everyone uses both dialectic and rhetoric. We all discuss things, try to maintain our points, defend ourselves, even attack others' arguments sometimes.
That human interaction.
Exactly. It's baked into how we communicate. And this leads him to a really key insight. He sees that, okay, some people are just naturally better at persuading or they get better with practice.
Yeah.
But he argues there must be reasons why they succeed. It's not just random. And if there are reasons, we can study them. We can treat it as a skill and art.
So moving from just doing it to actually understanding how it's done. Makes sense.
Precisely. It's about being more deliberate and informed in how we communicate.
Okay, so if we want to be more deliberate, where do we start? Dr. Bobby brings up this idea of the rhetorical situation. What's that?
Yeah, the rhetorical situation. Dr. Bobby presents it as kind of a framework, like a lens to view any persuasive act through. It's got 5 main parts.
5 parts. Okay.
You've got the audience, who are you talking to? The purpose, what do you want to achieve? The message, what are you actually saying? Right.
Then there's the context, what's the surrounding situation, the time, the place, and finally, the exigence.
Exigence.
Yeah, exigence. It's basically the problem or the need, the thing that makes communication necessary or urgent in the first place. Why are we even talking about this now?
Gotcha. Audience, purpose, message, context, exigence. Thinking about those gives you a handle on the situation.
It really helps ground the theory in, actual moments of communication.
Okay, cool. So we understand the situation. What did Aristotle think was the real engine of rhetoric, the most important part?
For Aristotle, it really boiled down to the modes of persuasion. He thought these were the absolute core. Everything else, kind of secondary, accessories.
The modes of persuasion, like ethos, pathos, logos. Though he maybe didn't use those exact terms here.
Well, those are definitely central to his thinking later on, but here he's making a broader point first. And he actually criticizes other writers.
Oh, what did they get wrong?
He felt they were neglecting something vital, what he called the substance of persuasion. And that was the enthymeme. Enthymeme. Okay, you mentioned that. Sounds important. What is an enthymeme?
It's a bit tricky, but think of it like a rhetorical argument. Dr. Bobby helps clarify this. Aristotle felt people were maybe focusing too much on just the art or the accessories and missing how arguments are actually built in rhetoric.
So the enthymeme is like the argument itself.
Kind of. It's how we connect ideas logically, but in a way that works for an audience, not just in pure logic. Aristotle saw it as bridging that gap between the art and the accessories. They actually work together through the enthymeme. It's central to how we convince.
Okay, that's interesting. It's not just about the logic, but how the logic is presented persuasively.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of persuasion, emotions, they obviously play a huge role. People try to make us feel things, pity, anger, whatever. What was Aristotle's take on using emotion?
He was actually pretty cautious about it, very wary. He argued that stirring up prejudice or pity or anger, well, that's more about appealing to the person judging, not about the actual facts of the case.
So it distracts from the issue.
That was his concern. He saw it as potentially warping judgment. He had this great analogy. He said, it's like trying to use a bent ruler if you're a carpenter.
Ah, right. It throws everything off.
It distorts the result. His ideal was that judgment should be based on reason and the facts, not just swayed by, temporary feelings.
Makes sense. You want the argument itself to be strong.
Yeah.
But hang on. Dr. Bobby adds something here about the audience, doesn't he? It's not just about the speaker pushing facts.
Oh, absolutely. This is a really key point from Dr. Bobby. He stresses that rhetoric isn't a one-way street. You're not just dumping information onto an audience.
Right.
It's more of a partnership. The audience isn't passive. They're actively interpreting, making sense of the message, bringing their own views.
So they're participants.
Exactly. They're active partners in creating meaning. And this is why audience awareness is so critical. You have to think about how they might hear it, how they might react.
So understanding that active role is crucial for persuading them. Okay. Now, Aristotle connects persuasion to demonstration, right? And he brings back the enthymeme, comparing it to a syllogism. Unpack that a bit.
Yes, definitely. Aristotle says that when we feel persuaded, it often feels like something's been proven or demonstrated to us.
Like seeing the logic click.
Right. And he identifies the enthymeme as the order's specific tool for doing that, demonstrating. He calls it the most effective mode of persuasion, and even says it's a sort of syllogism.
A syllogism. Okay, that's formal logic, isn't it? Like, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal.
Exactly that kind of structure, a couple of premises leading to a necessary conclusion.
So how is an enthymeme like that, but for rhetoric?
Well, it's similar in that it's a logical structure. Aristotle notes that understanding syllogisms, which is really part of dialectic, helps you understand enthymemes. But the key difference is that an enthymeme is often dealing with probabilities, not certainties, and it's tailored to a specific audience and situation. Sometimes a premise might even be left unstated because the audience is expected to fill it in.
Ah, okay, so it's like a practical, real-world version of a syllogism.
That's a good way to put it. And being good at formal logic helps you be good at constructing these rhetorical arguments, these enthymemes.
And Dr. Bobby has those cool modern examples to make this clear, right? The comics and movies thing.
Yes, this is such a neat way to think about it. Dr. Bobby brings in Scott McCloud's work on comics. McCloud talks about closure.
Closure.
Yeah.
Like how our brains fill in the gaps between panels.
Exactly. You see one panel, then another, and your mind connects them, figures out the action that happened in between. Dr. Bobby says interpreting that jump between two panels is like understanding an enthymeme. You're making an inference.
I see that. Okay.
And then when you read a whole sequence of panels and understand the story unfolding, that's like a syllogism in this analogy. It's a chain of these enthymemes, these inferences, building up a larger point or narrative.
Wow.
He even compares it to how still film frames running quickly create the illusion of motion, like a flip book. Our minds are constantly doing this interpretive work.
That really makes the idea of an enthymeme feel much more, well, intuitive. It's something our brains do naturally.
Right. Demystifies it a bit.
Okay, so Aristotle lays out this whole system, rhetoric, persuasion, enthymemes. But why did he think it was so important? What's the actual use of rhetoric? He gives reasons, right?
Oh yeah, he gives several strong arguments for its utility. First off, he argues that, generally speaking, truth and justice have a kind of natural tendency to win out.
A tendency.
Yeah.
Interesting word. Not a guarantee.
Exactly. It's not automatic. So his point is, if truth and justice don't prevail in a particular case, it's often because the people arguing for them just didn't do a good enough job. The speaker failed.
So rhetoric helps give truth and justice a fighting chance.
That's the idea. It puts the responsibility on the speaker to be effective.
Okay, that's one reason. What else?
Second, he points out that even if you have precise scientific knowledge about something, that alone might not be enough to persuade certain audiences.
Why not?
He felt that simply instructing people, just laying out the facts, doesn't always work. Some audiences, maybe they're not ready for it, or they need a different approach.
So you need rhetoric to bridge that gap.
Right. Now, it's worth noting Dr. Bobby kind of pushes back on this a little. He's maybe less convinced by the idea that some people just can't be instructed.
Ah, okay. So a point of ongoing discussion there.
Definitely. It touches on that tension between rhetoric, education, and just pure knowledge transfer.
Interesting. Okay, reason number 3 for rhetoric's usefulness.
Thirdly, Aristotle believed it's crucial to be able to argue both sides of a question.
Both sides. Isn't that dangerous, like arguing for something false?
Not necessarily to promote the false side, but he argued you need to understand all the arguments, the pros, and the cons to truly grasp the facts yourself. And importantly, so you can effectively refute unfair or weak arguments from opponents.
Ah, okay. Know your enemy's arguments as well as your own.
Precisely. And he notes that this ability to explore opposing views is something pretty unique to dialectic and rhetoric.
Got it. And his final point on why rhetoric matters.
His last point is quite striking, actually. He finds it absurd that people feel ashamed if they can't defend themselves physically,
Yeah.
but they don't feel ashamed if they can't defend themselves using speech and reason.
Good point.
He argues that using rational speech is, like, fundamentally human. It distinguishes us. So being skilled in using it effectively, being skilled in rhetoric, is essential to being a fully realized person.
So rhetoric isn't just a tool for manipulation. It's tied to truth, justice, understanding, and even our basic human nature.
That's a great summary of his view on its utility, yeah.
Okay, so given all that, what did Aristotle see as the overall scope of rhetoric? Is it only for politics or law courts? And what's its ultimate goal?
Scope-wise, definitely not limited. He's very clear, like dialectic, rhetoric isn't confined to any one specific subject area. You can apply it to almost anything people discuss.
So it's universal in that sense.
Exactly. And as for the goal, this is really important. He says the true function, the real aim of rhetoric isn't just to persuade someone in this one instance.
No. What is that?
It's to discover or identify all the available means of persuasion in any given situation, and then to use them as effectively as possible under those specific circumstances.
Ah, so it's about seeing the possibilities, like a toolbox.
Precisely. In that way, he aligns rhetoric with other arts or skills, like medicine isn't just about making this person healthy, but understanding all the ways to promote health. Rhetoric is about understanding all the ways to potentially persuade.
That really broadens the picture.
Hmm.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, digging into Aristotle's foundational ideas.
We really have. It's rich stuff.
So, thinking about everything we've discussed, what are the main takeaways? What should someone listening really hold on to from this part of On Rhetoric?
Well, I think first, just the idea that rhetoric isn't random. It can be studied systematically. It's the counterpart to logical argument, but focused on persuasion in real situations.
Right, the art of it.
Yeah. And then the importance of understanding that rhetorical situation, audience, purpose, message, context, exigence. You need that awareness.
Absolutely. Audience awareness came up a lot.
Definitely. And of course, the power of the enthymeme, that rhetorical argument, that sort of practical syllogism as the core engine of persuasion.
Even if he warned against just relying on raw emotion.
Right. A caution there, but still recognizing you connect with an audience. And finally, just remembering why Aristotle thought it was so valuable for truth, for justice, for understanding complex issues, and even as a core human ability.
It's way more than just winning an argument.
Much more.
So here's something maybe to leave you thinking about. As you go through your week, start noticing those moments of communication. How might consciously thinking about these Aristotelian ideas, who you're talking to, the context, the potential enthymemes you could use, how might that change how you approach things?
Yeah, from just, everyday chats to maybe bigger presentations or discussions.
Can you start spotting the rhetorical situations playing out around you?
Yeah.
It definitely gives you a new lens to look through, something to mull over.